my name's Katya, and today I'm going to talk to you about game stats in Gamestar Mechanic. So here I am in my home page, and I'm going to go to the workshop to view game stats. Now, game stats are statistics on my games that show me how other players have played my games. So for example, if I go over to Moving Block for You, which is a game I made, and click on View Stats, I'll see that this game has 3 levels, and in each level I can see how many players started the level versus how many finished, and then finally how many players started the game versus how many finished the game total. So you'll see here 54 players started level 1, but only 34 players finished it. That could be because level 1 is difficult, that could be because level 1 is boring. I'm not sure at this point, all I have is the raw numbers. If I click on A level, I'll see that players tried the level 105 times and they succeeded 34 times, meaning maybe the level is a little bit tricky. Let's try level 3. I'll see players tried 56 times and succeeded 20 times. This means level 3 might not be as difficult. You'll see by the shape of my graph here that a bunch of people started and not as many finished. So we're beginning to talk about how to use graphs and charting data to understand information about your game, to understand how other players play your game. What's really interesting here as a teacher is that you can see the game stats of your students. So to do that, you go to your workshop, scroll down to Classes, and click on Student Tracking for your class. In Student Tracking, you can click on the Publish Games of a student, and you'll see that student's published games with that View Stats button next to it. So here my student Charles made a game with 6 levels, and you'll see that 27 players started level 1 and there were 27 winners, meaning level 1 is either very fun or pretty easy. As the chart progresses, you'll see that levels have less and less winners, and finally only 4 people beat the entire game. Another really interesting thing to point out to your students is the difference between the number of people who beat a level and who started the next level. So you'll see from level 1 to level 2, 27 winners, 27 started the next level. No one dropped off. From level 2 to level 3, the same, no one dropped off. But in level 3 to level 4, you lost a person. They beat level 3, but didn't continue to level 4. Why is that? These are good questions we ask ourselves as designers because we want players to continue through the whole game. Let's take a look at another chart. This one, we have a game from one of my students where 369 players started it and a whole 206 finished. Again, if you click on the level for data, you'll see they tried it 557 times and succeeded 354 times. Now that's a lot of plays and a lot of players. It's a good idea to encourage your students to play each other's games because the more players and the more plays a game has, the more interesting and accurate the statistics will be. This game, for example, 564 players started it and only 4 finished it.
And again, if we look at the number of tries a level has, we'll see some really interesting ratios, some interesting comparisons. So check out over here, 39 people started level 2 and they tried it 413 times. That gives an average of 10 or more tries per player and only succeeded 5 times. So what does that number tell us about the level? It's probably really difficult but really, really fun to keep players going, trying 10 times even if they couldn't succeed. For another example of that, if we look back at the game that Charles made that we looked at earlier, take a look at level 1. 27 people started it, and they tried 33 times to beat the level. That means that each player tried the level probably only once, and they succeeded 27 times. So this level is easier, it warrants only 1 try for most players, and everyone succeeds.
Now look at the shape of this chart. Starts very wide and goes very, very, very skinny. Looking at the shape of charts is also interesting for students to learn about reading graphs, but also to understand how the data that they're collecting represents their game. If you look over on the side here, next to any game stats is an infographic about how to read your game's chart. You'll see that if your chart looks like a straight pipe, maybe everyone who started it finished it, and that means it's really fun, but it also could mean it's really easy. If your chart looks more like a funnel, fewer and fewer people complete each level, so your game gets harder over time, or maybe it gets more boring over time. If your chart starts like this one over here, very wide and gets really skinny, then there's one big drop off where people may have dropped off because the level is too difficult, or maybe it's just too long. Looking at the shape of the chart is really interesting for students to understand how people are playing their games. It's important to note here that your students are collecting quantitative data, and in order to understand this quantitative data, it's helpful to look at qualitative data. So encourage your students, after they look at their game stats, to look at the comments that they get in Game Alley. In Game Alley, games collect comments and reviews from other players so students can see the qualitative feedback on their games and learn about how that qualitative feedback pairs with the quantitative feedback. Finally, it can be fun to use game stats if you're teaching a class on statistics. You can have your students chart these graphs in different ways. You can have them look at the ratios between how many players started and how many finished each level, and represent those as fractions or decimals. The skills that students learn here in understanding data are the same kind of skills that real game designers use when looking at data of the players who test out their games. So encourage your students to be pro game designers and use GameStats.